Welcome back to Zero Mile ADV. Today we're going to talk about my dual sport and my favorite mods on the Honda CRF450 RL. That's a mouthful. How's my hair? I got a haircut, so hopefully it's better. But if you think it looks terrible, if you think it looks ugly, if you think you hate my glasses, you hate my videos, leave a comment below. But today we're going to talk about all of the mods I've done to my dual sport, why I made those changes, and then we'll go for a quick ride. So with that, stay tuned. All right, let's start with probably the most important mod you'll do to any bike, and that's the tires. Whether that's an adventure bike or dual sport, if it's a street legal bike, it's going to come with a lot more street oriented tires. If you're like me when you first started, then you probably want those 80/20 tires because you're going to spend a lot of time on the road just having adventures around town. But then eventually when you want to get off-road, you're going to need some more off-road focused tires. The tires that came on this bike were not great. So I put on the Dunlop D606s. It was kind of a toss-up between these tires and the Motoz Tractionator Desert HTs, I think is what they're called. But my local shop, they had the D606s. They raved about them. They didn't have the Motoz, and so we'd have to order them. So I went with the D606s. I also put in heavy duty tubes. If you're new to motorcycling, you may say tubes, like we're still using tubes? Yes, in a lot of spoked wheels, they're not sealed and they're not tubeless, and so you have to run a tube. So I put in heavy duty tubes, which are like 4mm thick tubes to help prevent pinch flats if I'm out riding harder stuff. I do run a little bit of a stiffer pressure at around 19 pounds, and with the heavy duty tubes, hopefully that should prevent any flats when I'm out here on the trails. Okay, the second mod and the third mod. We don't really have to move to talk about this one, so we'll talk about both of these. The second mod that I put on here that I really enjoy is the larger fuel tank. This is an IMS 3-gallon fuel tank. I initially went with the black because the color scheme, to be vain, to be honest with you. I was like, oh, the black looks cooler. However, the clear allows you to see the level of the gas in the tank. And so talking with a couple of friends on the Colorado BDR that also have some smaller dual sports, they like the clear tank because you can actually visually see the gas, which is pretty awesome. Didn't think about that when I got the black one, but the 3-gallon tank, it just gives me longer range. I need, if I'm gonna go up to the Grand Mesa and ride, it is a 30-mile ride just there, and then it's 30 miles back. So that's 60 miles of range, not including the trail time. With this tank, I'm averaging, even with the other mods that we'll talk about, I'm averaging probably, I always guesstimate 45 miles a gallon. I'm guessing I can probably I'm getting closer to 50 according to the clock, like the fuel estimate, even with the power mods on here. However, I always guesstimate about 45 miles to the gallon. So 45 times 3, so 4590, about 135 miles I can go on one tank, which gives me plenty of range to get up to some of the other trails, ride, and then be able to ride home. So second favorite mod was the gas tank. Pretty easy to install. The hardest part is just kind of reshaping these fenders to fit, but the install itself is pretty straightforward, pretty easy to do, and probably one of my favorite mods. The next one we'll talk about is the controls here, and I have these hand guards. These are the Cerebus. I'm not sure how you say this. I'm new to this whole like dirt biking and off-road adventure thing. So I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but these are Cerebus handguards. If you've seen my other videos talking about this bike, I drop this bike a lot, and so having these handguards is pretty much a must because it's nice because they pretty much take all the brunt of the impact. When I drop the bike, they're pretty much hitting the ground first, and it seems like every time I go out, I drop the bike. When we go for a ride later after this video, let's knock on seat. Hopefully we don't drop the bike today and we can actually make it through the ride. But yeah, anywhere I can add protection that helps essentially protect the bike from me and my terrible riding skills is better. So number 3 would be these Cerebus handguards because they're pretty tough. They've taken a beating so far and have been really good. The next mod number 4, would be, I think, this is probably, aside from the tires, This is probably the most important mod if you're gonna do anything, and this is a seat concept seat. And also, I'm a little bit disappointed. I thought the seat was gonna be primarily blue with then red stripes, but when I got the seat, it actually was red with blue stripes. I kind of wanted it the other way to give it that kind of like vintage Honda look, but it is what it is. This is how they make it. Anyways, this seat is a huge upgrade over the stock seat. The stock seat is a dirt bike seat. It is meant like to really not be on it, right? Like you're ripping a track, you're up and out of the seat all the time. So when I have to ride 30 miles to get to a trail, it is super uncomfortable. It was awful. So seat concept seats, everybody raves about these seats. And so far, the little miles I had, because it takes a little while to get. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks to get one. So the little bit of time that I have on one, it's been really good. So seat concept seats, I would highly recommend. Okay, the next mod is the Yoshimura Exhaust. I also got this Cerebus like silicone guard because I dropped the bike a lot, and so I didn't want to jack my muffler up. I went actually full header pipe back, so I got their full system with the P3 carbon guard for the front as well to protect the front pipe, and it is loud. I wish they did make a bit of a dB reducer or silencer for this thing, but it sounds good. It sounds way better than factory. I'm not a huge loud exhaust guy. I do like exhaust. I do like the sound of it. So it's like one hard thing with all the electric stuff coming out. Like it just sounds terrible. It's like, wee, right? Where this, you start it and it sounds good. So the Yoshimura exhaust, it sounds good. It's a little bit on the loud side. It comes with the spark arrestor, so you're not starting any wildfires when you're out on trails. It looks good. You also save a lot of weight. The stock system is pretty heavy, and so by removing that, you actually save a lot of weight, which is always helpful when you're having to pick the bike up, because after the 4th or 5th time of picking the bike up, every pound counts, right? So yeah, the Yoshimura exhaust. Okay, these mods you can't really see. This next mod you really can't see except for the toggle switch. So I got the Get ECU from Moto. The nice thing is when you order it, I ordered it with the exhaust, and so they basically program it so that you have the exhaust and the ECU at the same time, so they map it so it runs. The nice thing is it has this toggle switch, so up here is street mode, gives you a lot more power on the street, a lot more responsive for the street, and then the down is the enduro mode, and it definitely toggles the power back. It makes the throttle way better. It's not as twitchy. The first thing that was really hard for me, if you saw my initial video on this bike, was just how twitchy the throttle was. This has really helped. I did also get the G2 throttle tube, which also helps to tame it down. With those two mods, the bike is, I think rides far better, is all I can say. So the G2 throttle tube and the Get ECU, it really just kind of changed the bike, and I love how it rides now. I also did get a 1 1/8" bar to 7/8 taper, and it does rise a little bit more. So I didn't do actual like 1-inch riser stacks on the triple tree. I did get new triple tree clamps just because they're blue and they look cool and they're not terribly expensive, and they're really easy to install. And I needed a bigger diameter to fit the 1 1/8" clamp area versus the 7/8 where the controls are. So I needed those anyways. They were pretty cheap, so I got cool blue ones to kind of match the retro theme. I do like the higher, taller rise bar. It is a good compromise between standing and sitting. The factory bar for me, and I've had some comments where it's like, oh, if you can't ride it perfect, like it's not the right bike for you. And I just don't think that's the case. I think motorcycle is one of the fun things. It doesn't really seem to matter if you're riding a Harley or if you're riding a dual sport, if you're riding an adventure bike. They're fun to customize to kind of your riding style and ability and your comfort and all that stuff. So I think the high rise bar as opposed to the kind of lower rise bar that came factory on the Honda is a better compromise. So it gives me a little bit, like it's still comfortable when I'm sitting tight up on the tank, but then it's not so low when I stand up to get through the rough stuff. So that was that. I also have the quad lock for my phone here in this case, and it has the vibration dampener. And so this just allows me to use the maps and to navigate where I'm going. It also, there's a little plug. So the RL has an adapter where you can actually plug in a USB cable. So it basically plugs in and it's pre-wired. So when you turn the bike on, it'll actually charge your device as opposed to just drawing straight off the battery. So I did get that. I do like that a lot. It's nice to be able to charge my phone. The first couple times, for a while, I didn't have the adapter to be able to run the USB cable, and you'd be out and you're out on, and you're draining your battery. And so the last thing you want to do is like get stranded, not have any cell service or a battery and have problems. So it's nice to be able to charge the phone and use my maps, Onyx Back Road, DMD2 maps, whatever, while also charging the phone. And it doesn't draw a lot of power. It's got the vibration dampening in it. I basically used this quad lock motorcycle thing with the vibration dampener on all my bikes. I don't have it on my Harley. I think I should get it for the Harley. But yeah, I definitely have it on the adventure bike. So I'll probably get another one for the Harley. And the last couple mods that I've done on this bike, I did get the double take mirrors. I have these on my Venture bike as well. They fold out of the way. They're super dirty. They do get dirty. Durable. They're super durable. And these are nice because they're shorter. The factory mirrors, like, as many times as I dropped the bike before I put these on, I'm surprised they lasted. But these are far better. I got these double take mirrors. I also got a Yoshimura tail tidy kit, and I got the Moto like magnet plate. My plate was getting beat up not having this on, so the factory tail kit comes like way down. This just kind of moves everything up. Still the factory tail lights, it just kind of moves the license plate bracket up, and then with this magnetic plate, when you wreck, it allows your plate to move out of the way as opposed to just getting crushed. So those are kind of the last minor things. And as I've talked about, as much as I've dropped this bike, pretty important for me to have those mods on there. So that is it. Those are all the things I've done to the Honda. So now that we've spent a lot of time finishing the BDR, let's go ride this thing on a little bit of a tougher trail. It took me a little bit to get used to coming up to this spot here where I like to film. So it will be interesting to see how we do when we get back into the rougher stuff, and there's just kind of like crazy bench cut trail, so we'll see how it goes, because I haven't ridden this bike in a while. So with that, if you haven't already subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. It's all free, it doesn't cost you anything, and it just helps the channel, all the YouTube algorithm stuff and whatnot. And now let's go for a ride. Alright, as we go for a quick ride here, one thing I want to point out is I noticed in the beginning of this video, rewatching this footage, that the clips part is, dang, I look fat as heck. And as somebody who goes to the gym 4 or 5 days a week, you know, I'm working out a lot, trying to stay healthy, trying to watch my diet, that wide 24mm lens did not do my body any justice, and I look terrible, but we're keeping it in there. So leave a comment below. Do you think I look just fat as hell? Get out. Do I look terrible? It was awful. That camera angle did me no justice. Anyways, so now we're out here. This loop out here near, this is essentially BLM land out near Palisade, Colorado. And I've only ridden this loop on this bike one other time before, shortly after I'd gotten the bike. Actually, I wrecked the bike, so the bike had like 62 miles at that point, and I went way too fast and whiskey throttled it and slid it out. So this track I've only done one other time before, and it was kind of hard for me, to be honest, especially like this downhill section was a bit rough. But now coming through it, having just come off the Colorado BDR and spending a lot of time on the bike and doing a lot more other rides on this bike, felt pretty easy, to be honest with you. I think one thing that I didn't learn that was like a big advantage of actually having motocross boots, other than the actual protection they provide you, is that when you're going down steep stuff like this, the boots really give you a good platform to squeeze the bike, to kind of hold the bike with your legs as you're working your way through, and to kind of help create some stability. If you haven't seen it, Chris Birch has some videos called Say No to Slow, and he talks about this concept of using the boots against the bike. Definitely worth it. I think the videos are only like, the series is only like worth $30. It's definitely worth it. I'll do a review on that series because I think it is definitely worth the $30. But having the motocross boots on this bike definitely helps with the kind of stability. Coming up this section, actually up here on the left, one other time I came out and I didn't want to do this full loop, and where you could potentially make a left up here was probably the hardest climb I've ever done, and I wrecked, and it was pretty tough, but it was fun. So here, working on kind of like, this isn't super steep, but we're about to come into a steeper section, and what I really wanted to test is because the bike is to see how this bike engine brakes. So here, it's pretty steep. GoPro footage doesn't really do any justice. There's a lot of ruts on both sides, so you kind of have to just take this narrow track in the middle, and it works its way all the way down. I didn't use any brakes on this, and so I just wanted to see how fast the bike would keep me going, and it looks like it's keeping me like right at 9 miles an hour, which is pretty comfortable. Now, granted, this is not as steep as like the backside of Corkscrew, where I had a lot of problems on the adventure bike. So here, you know, good test, but it would be interesting to go out and take this bike out to the Alpine loop and see how it does. I purposely sought out this loop. I remember this section because it was kind of steep and very loose, and I know I need to get better at riding steep and loose. So coming back through here, honestly, just let the bike out, you know, do it, carry whatever speed it wants, and just kind of worked it through. Now, granted, this bike weighs just shy of 300 pounds, and my adventure bike's 500 pounds, so it's a whole different ball game, but it still gives me some, you know, a good way to practice. One thing that it was also tough getting back on this bike, having come off the Tiger 900 for over a week and being so used to that bike on the dirt, is this bike, the rear end slides around all over the place. Here's another section as we're coming down, just more steep, loose rock, just trying to get better at this steep, loose stuff, and I think I need to practice this more and more. Out here in the BLM, there's a lot of these steep sand hills, so I think it would be good for me to go out and just ride some more of these steep sand hills and just get real comfortable with the steep stuff. But getting back to that point, like, one thing that this bike does, especially in this soft dirt, is that back end slides out a lot, kind of all over the place. And as we come down here and around the corner, you're going to see, we're going to hit, and you can kind of see the cut in the mountain there. So just to the right of that big power pole, you can see like the cut in the mountain. And it's just kind of like a, I don't know if it was actually made or if people have just been riding on the side of the mountain enough to kind of cut it inside the hill, because it is very angled. There's not a lot of, it's not really cut in, it's kind of more of just like ridden in. And so as we're coming up here, I was trying to stay right, because you can see the hillside slides off to the left, so if you make a mistake, you don't want to go down the hillside. Now, granted, it would be pretty easy to get out of, assuming you don't break yourself or the bike, but I was trying to stay more right. As you can see, it's really steep, and right about up here, the bike just slide, you know, the rear tire is just going to break loose right here, and I kind of lose speed, and so I'm like, all right, I'm going to get over here to the left where it's a little bit flatter. But this is one of those things where it's like being comfortable with the back end breaking loose. I think one downside to riding the adventure bike, or this bike in preparation more for the Colorado BDR, was the fact that this bike breaks loose a lot. And so when the other bike wasn't breaking loose and you feel the traction control kicking in, it was, you know, it was kind of throwing me off. But once I put the other bike in off-road pro mode, it made things so much better. But this is only the second time I've done this. I did this track the second time far faster, so it is kind of amazing like how quick your skills will build with just a little bit of riding, right? Like how quickly you can adapt when you're intentional about going and riding things that are kind of out of your comfort limit. First time I rode this, it took me a while, and I was like real nervous about like wrecking my bike or getting it flat. I think I still had the stock tires on it at that point. I didn't have the heavy duty tubes, and I didn't have the D606s, so I was worried about getting it flat, stuck out there, and I'd only done this loop, yeah, like I said, one time before. But coming back through the second time, went through a lot faster and just getting better at carrying my speed. And this, and there's actually a lot more to the, I guess it would be to the south, rather than kind of coming up that benchside hill that you can go towards this area called Westwater. And so the BLM plan kind of really extends out here, and it gives me just an opportunity to practice a lot. I think what I should do eventually is bring the big bike out here and really practice the big bike skills before I do another BDR, because I think this would be a great place to practice, because the dirt's pretty soft and kind of forgiving. I also forget too, like how cool the views are as you're coming down this chute and looking at Mount Garfield. That's what you saw in the background there. So yeah, then headed down here, was basically decided to take the canal back to the main road instead of doing more road, because it would be a bit more fun. Although one thing I didn't realize as I had gotten to the canal trail road as we were coming up here is that like the canal itself is actually really deep. So as you can see here, right now it's full of water, but in the winter when it's dry, that thing's like 8 or 9 feet deep. So with this gravel being so loose, if in the back end wanting to slide out, if you washed out and then the bike went in the canal, you aren't getting it out until winter, and so pretty much you can kiss your bike goodbye because it is pretty deep. So I was just trying to take it easy if you're here, and also being on the canal road next to all the peach orchards and wine orchards, just trying to be respectful before we cut back to the main road. And here we are, kind of making our final stint. So with that, let me know what you think. What kind of mods have you done on your Honda CRF450 RL? Have you ridden, leave a comment below, have you ridden the KTMs? Have you ridden like the 500 KTMs or the Gas or the Husky? Do you think they're better? Make sure to comment, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button. If you don't like the video, leave a comment below and tell me why you didn't like this video. And until next time, stay safe out there.